Today we're going to wrap it up with a few thoughts about the 800-pound bear in the room, Apple.
And what's happening with Apple?
What's not happening with Apple? It's the 800-pound bear in the room, right? Like the last couple of weeks, December has been a brutal month for Apple. The stock has dropped from a high of 232 on October 3rd to a low of 142 on January 3rd. Last couple of days have been good for Apple or the U.S. stock market in general. My view on that is just, people do a lot of tax loss harvesting in December, so people are selling a lot of stocks in December to kind of book their losses for the year and, pay less in taxes potentially. And then beginning of January, people start buying back in, so that kind of bumps prices back up. Hopefully this is sustainable, and we'll start seeing the market stabilize and moving back up. But everyone's been talking about Apple's letter a couple of days ago or last week, how it pretends is a global slowdown and how Apple is no longer innovating. All these things may be true, they may not be true, I don't know. But the stock market definitely taking a hatchet out to Apple. It's trading at a ridiculous PE of under 12. What's interesting is newer products like the 2018 iPad Pro show Apple is continuing to evolve as a company, but more importantly, the company's evolving our view of the future. I've been a Unix and Linux and Mac user for a very long time. I couldn't take a trip without bringing my MacBook Air or my MacBook Pro along with me, even if it was just for a weekend. Recently, I picked up the new iPad Pro in November, and I've moved almost all of my workflow onto the new iPad. There are a lot of reviews out there of their iPad, so I'm not looking to review the product. I haven't felt the need for external storage yet. The cloud services between iCloud and Dropbox, it's worked wonderfully. And I think as people begin this transition, I think we're likely to see more of Apple's revenue distribute evenly between devices other than the iPhone and also increasingly to services. A lot of people have been talking about how their services revenue has increased substantially in 2018. But, Apple does need to get their services on par with those from Google and Amazon. And I think we're looking at another 2 to 3 years before we see a significant shift in that revenue. What's also interesting is just a couple of days ago at CES, Apple announced that they're going to bring all of their iTunes content libraries and support for AirPlay directly onto Samsung screens. So Samsung TVs produced in 2018 and 2019 will natively allow you to view your iTunes purchased music, movies, and television shows directly on the TV without buying an Apple TV or without having to hook up your phone or your laptop or your iPad. So I think that's a huge move, and I think it's interesting to see that Apple has changed the way that they're thinking about distribution of their content. The other thing is with their massive war chest in the hundreds of billions, they may be able to move a bit quicker, but bottleneck is always people. Finding the right people that can rapidly roll out new products and innovate on existing ones, both hardware and software, is going to be a real test of Apple's management. It's also going to continue to being a problem for Apple to continue betting on China so heavily. There are other large, though more price-sensitive markets where Apple has started paying more attention to, but unfortunately has seen the market go to lower-cost hardware and software solutions, right? Like India, right? You've seen Android really take over in India because the iPhones are just too expensive.
So I agree with you. I think iPhone is definitely too expensive for the Indian markets, but also I think there's a couple of factors to consider. Look, there's a U.S.-China trade war that is going on. At the same time, the U.S. equity market is as a whole is trading low, right? And it's a sell button.
Yeah.
But I think falling from $230 to trading at almost you're looking at a decline of 33% of the company's stock, right? So that is it. I think that is something to be concerned about if you're an investor. But if it's Warren Buffett, when something is low as Apple, you buy it, right? You buy more, hoping that company because they have a good business plan. You're addicted to their products, and I still think Apple has one of the best products in the market compared to what you see out there.
Yeah, and like you said, right, like when other people are scared, be bold, right? Anyone who's been holding Apple stock over the last 3 months is feeling a lot of pain. But I'm not talking about trading. But if you're looking at a long-term investment, you know, Apple's got some good products in the pipeline. They may not be the most innovative products. Apple's definitely fallen behind Amazon and Google on the voice assistant side of it. But I think the HomePod is a pretty good device. I have one. I use it fairly regularly. You can do some good things with it, and in some cases, I think it's actually better than Alexa. I'm still, yeah, absolutely. There's certain things I'll ask Alexa, and Alexa will just say, I can't do that yet. And I'll ask Siri, and it'll do it. So, like, for example, where we were going somewhere one day, and my wife asked Alexa, how long is it going to take to get there? And Alexa said, I can't do that. I asked HomePod, how long is it going to take to get there? And within a few seconds, I had an answer. And it was pretty accurate. I was, probably a 5-minute margin of difference in when we actually got on the road. So I actually like HomePod for certain things, and I think Alexa's good for other things. I'm really betting on the iPad. I think the iPad really took off when it was launched, and then it kind of saw this lull, and people just kind of started writing it off. But I think the new iPads have really kind of changed that. They're pricey, though. That's the thing, right? Apple's products have just continued to become more and more expensive, at least the top of the line products. So, it's something to keep an eye on. I think it's, I think the company's a great company. They have great products, and there's going to be a lot of interesting things that they're going to be building over the next couple of years, especially if they're taking a very open approach, which we're starting to see a little glimmer of now, right? So if they're going to allow people to start integrating into their products without having to sell Apple hardware, how is that going to affect the stock, and how is that going to affect people, buying Apple products, and not just hardware products, software products, right? With their own production studio now, they're going to launch their own television shows, perhaps their own movies. That's content which you will be able to buy on your Samsung TV without having to own an Apple product. You don't need an Apple TV, you don't need an Apple phone. You can just buy it right from your Samsung TV. So I think that'll be interesting.
No, that is very, very interesting. As we move on, I think content is king. And I think both Amazon and Netflix and obviously Apple, they're in it for a long. They basically do have the infrastructure in place, and a number of users using iPhone, iPad, and other Apple devices. So I think they have the right platform to build content for the global audience.
Yeah.